The colony ship Exodus Dawn drifted through the cold darkness of space like a wounded animal waiting to die. Its hull was covered in burn marks and deep gashes. Smoke still leaked from sections that had been sealed off to prevent the entire ship from losing air. Out of the 12,000 people who had started this journey to find a new home, only 847 remained alive. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the damaged bridge and looked at the faces of her crew. They were exhausted. They were scared. They had been running for 3 weeks since the attack, and now they had nowhere left to run. The engines were failing. Life support would last maybe another 10 days, if they were lucky. Food was running low. Medicine was almost gone. She had a choice to make, and it was the hardest choice of her life. "Open a channel," she said quietly. "All frequencies, including the restricted ones." Her communications officer, a young woman named Sarah, looked at her with wide eyes. "Captain, if we broadcast on all frequencies, the Kethvari will hear us. They'll know exactly where we are." "I know," Elena said, "but so will Earth. So will every human ship and station within range. We're going to die out here anyway, Sarah. We might as well let our people know what happened to us." Sarah nodded slowly and began working at her damaged console. After a few moments, she looked up. "Channel open, Captain." Elena took a deep breath and began to speak. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the colony ship Exodus Dawn. 3 weeks ago, we were attacked without warning by vessels belonging to the Kethvari Dominion. They killed over 11,000 of our people, men, women, and children. They took prisoners. We do not know how many or where they have been taken. We have been running ever since, but we cannot run anymore. Our ship is dying. We are dying. To anyone who can hear this message, please help us. Please remember us. This is the Exodus Dawn, signing off." The message went out into the void, traveling at the speed of light in all directions. It would take time to reach anyone who could help. Time they might not have. 3 days later, the message reached Earth. It arrived at the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Luna, Earth's moon, at exactly 3:47 in the morning local time. A young technician named James was the first to hear it. He listened to Captain Vasquez's words once, then twice, then a third time. His hands were shaking when he forwarded it to his supervisor. Within an hour, the message had reached the highest levels of the United Earth government. Within 6 hours, it had been broadcast on every news channel on every human world. And within 12 hours, the anger of humanity had reached a boiling point. The Kethvari Dominion was well known throughout the galaxy. They were an ancient species, powerful and cruel. For thousands of years, they had raided other worlds and taken prisoners to sell as slaves. The galactic community knew about this. The Galactic Council, the great assembly of elder species that governed interstellar affairs, knew about this. But the Kethvari were protected by complex treaties and powerful allies. No one had ever held them accountable for their crimes. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for less than 300 years. They were still considered a young species, a minor species, not worthy of a seat among the great powers. When humans complained about Kethvari raids on their outer colonies, they were told to be patient. They were told that the diplomatic process took time. They were told that they did not understand how the galaxy worked. Admiral Marcus Chen understood exactly how the galaxy worked. He had spent 40 years in the United Earth Defense Fleet. Rising from a young pilot to the commander of the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, he had seen what happened when humans tried to play by the rules. He had buried his own daughter. After a Kethvari raid 15 years ago, now he stood before an assembly of fleet commanders in a secure bunker deep beneath the surface of Mars. "You have all seen the message from the Exodus Dawn," he said. "You know what the Kethvari have done. The Galactic Council has already sent us a warning. They say we must not take action against the Dominion. They say the Kethvari are protected by treaty. They say that humanity does not have the standing to challenge an elder species." He paused and looked around the room at the grim faces of his officers. They are wrong. The room remained silent. Every officer present knew what the Admiral was suggesting. They were talking about war with one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were talking about defying the Galactic Council itself. "Sir," one of the commanders spoke up, "the Council will never support this. We could face sanctions, isolation, even military action from other species." Admiral Chen nodded. "I know. I also know that there are 847 people on that ship who are waiting to die. I know that there are prisoners in Kethvari hands right now, human beings who will be sold like animals if we do nothing. And I know that if we let this happen, if we follow the rules and wait for justice, that will never come. Then we are telling the galaxy that human lives do not matter." He walked to a large display screen and activated it. A map of the galaxy appeared, showing human territory, Kethvari space, and the vast distances between them. "The Council says we have no standing," the Admiral continued. "But standing is not given. It is taken. It is earned. And it is time for humanity to show the galaxy exactly where we stand." He turned back to face his officers. "We have 300 warships ready to deploy. We have the best soldiers, the best pilots, and the best engineers in the galaxy. We have something else too, something the Kethvari have never faced in 3,000 years of conquest." "What is that, Admiral?" someone asked. Marcus Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was the smile of a man who had waited 15 years for this moment. It's a species that does not forget, a species that does not forgive, and a species that will cross the entire galaxy to bring its people home. He looked at each officer in turn. Kethvari think they know what war is. They have raided and conquered and enslaved for millennia, but they have never fought an enemy who was willing to sacrifice everything. They have never fought humans. The commanders began to nod one by one. They understood what was being asked of them. They understood the risks. And they understood that some things were more important than safety, more important than following rules, more important than the approval of elder species who had looked away from evil for thousands of years. "We launch in 72 hours, Admiral Chen said. Dismissed. As the officers filed out to begin preparations, the Admiral remained behind. He walked to a window and looked out at the red surface of Mars. Somewhere out there, far beyond the reach of human eyes, a damaged ship full of desperate people was waiting for an answer to their cry for help. "We're coming," he whispered. "Hold on just a little longer. We're coming." And across the vast emptiness of space, as if the universe itself was listening, the message of humanity's response began to spread. It was not a message of diplomacy or caution. It was not a message of patience or restraint. It was a promise, and humanity always kept its promises. And so echoed across the stars, humanity's vengeance. Was the reply part to the Galactic Council chamber was the largest enclosed space in the known universe. It had been built 10,000 years ago by species that no longer existed, and it had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Today, it witnessed something it had never seen before. The human ambassadors walked out, all of them. From every human world, every station, every colony, they stood up from their seats in the minor species section, gathered their belongings, and walked toward the great doors in complete silence. They did not shout. They did not make speeches. They simply left. Ambassador Korath of the Kethvari Dominion watched them go with amusement on his scaled face. He was a large creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with dark green skin and eyes that glowed with a soft yellow light. His people had dominated this region of space for 3,000 years. They had crushed empires and enslaved billions. These young humans and their little tantrum meant nothing to him. "Let them go," he said loudly, making sure everyone in the chamber could hear. "They will learn their place soon enough. My people have been conquering worlds since before their ancestors climbed down from the trees. What can they possibly do to us?" Several other ambassadors laughed nervously. Others remained silent. A few looked worried, but no one stopped the humans from leaving. On Earth, the mobilization had already begun. It was not like anything the galaxy had ever seen. When the Kethvari went to war, they sent their military forces and left their civilians behind. When humans went to war, everyone contributed. Miners in the asteroid belt worked double shifts to extract the metals needed for weapons and ships. Factory workers on industrial worlds pushed their machines to the breaking point to manufacture ammunition and supplies. Scientists in laboratories across 100 planets stopped their research projects and focused entirely on finding weaknesses in HFY technology. Even children collected scrap metal and old electronics for recycling. It was not just anger that drove them. It was something deeper. Every human knew that the people on the Exodus Dawn could have been their family, could have been them. And every human knew that if they were the ones dying in the darkness of space, they would want someone to come for them. Display, his crew held their breath. One wrong reading, one curious scan operator, and their entire operation would be exposed. But the diplomatic ship continued on its way, completely unaware that 200 warships were hiding in the darkness just a few thousand kilometers away. "They didn't see us," the sensor officer whispered. Admiral Chen allowed himself a small smile. "No, they didn't." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a coded message to Commander Tanaka. Tell her we'll be in position in 4 days. Tell her to be ready." On the Exodus Dawn, David Park had performed another miracle. The oxygen recyclers had failed completely 2 days ago. According to every engineering manual ever written, the ship should have become uninhabitable within hours. But David had refused to accept that. He had spent 36 hours without sleep, crawling through damaged systems and improvising solutions that no one had ever tried before. Now the ship had air. Not good air, not clean air, but breathable air. Captain Vasquez found him collapsed in a maintenance corridor, too exhausted to make it back to his quarters. She sat down beside him and waited for him to wake up. When his eyes finally opened, she handed him a cup of water. "You saved us again," she said quietly. David shook his head. "I just bought us more time. A few more days, maybe a week." "The ship is dying, Captain." "I can slow it down, but I can't stop it," Lena nodded. She understood. "Few more days might be enough," she said. David looked at her with confusion. "Enough for what?" She hesitated. She had kept the message secret for days, afraid to give false hope. But David deserved to know. He had earned that much. "I received a coded transmission," she said. "Help is coming. I don't know when exactly. But someone heard our message. Someone is on their way." David stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his exhausted face. "Then I'll keep this ship alive until they get here," he said. "Whatever it takes." The HFY auction master reviewed the upcoming sales with satisfaction. This was going to be an excellent season. The humans were particularly valuable. They were strong, adaptable, and intelligent, perfect for labor, entertainment, or other purposes. Buyers from across the galaxy had already expressed interest. He did not know that his facility had been infiltrated. He did not know that human soldiers were watching his every move, recording his security protocols, mapping his escape routes. He did not know that a fleet of warships was approaching his world. Carrying weapons that would turn his profitable enterprise to ash, the auction master was thinking about profit. He was thinking about the bidding wars that would drive up prices. He was thinking about the commissions he would earn. He was not thinking about revenge. That was his mistake. In the darkness of space, Admiral Chen looked at the countdown timer on his display. 3 days until they reached HFY Prime. 3 days until the largest military operation in human history began. He thought about the people he was going to save. He thought about the people he could not save, the ones who had already died or been sold before he could reach them. He thought about his daughter, buried on a colony world that the HFY had raided 15 years ago. He could not bring back the dead. He could not undo the centuries of suffering that the HFY had caused. But he could make a statement. He could show the galaxy that human lives had value. He could prove that there were consequences for cruelty, even for an elder species, even for a power that had never been challenged. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "I'm picking up chatter from the Council diplomatic ship. They've arrived at HFY Prime. They're requesting a meeting with the HFY leadership." Shun nodded. "Let them talk. It won't matter soon." He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere ahead, hidden by distance and darkness, his enemies waited. They had no idea what was coming. 3 more days? he whispered to himself. Just 3 more days. And in her hiding place, beneath the surface of Kethver Prime, Commander Tanaka cleaned her weapon and waited for the signal that would change everything. An SOS, echoed across the stars humanity's vengeance, was the reply part for the auction master. Pressed the activation button with one clawed finger. Across the galaxy, screens flickered to life in the private chambers of wealthy buyers. The bidding system was online. The auction was about to begin. The first lot appeared on display. 12 human children, ages ranging from 5 to 12. Separated from their families during the raid on the Exodus Dawn, the auction master began his presentation, describing their health, their potential uses, their expected lifespan under proper care. He never finished his first sentence. Every light in the facility went dark. Every screen went blank. Every door lock clicked open. Every security system crashed simultaneously. For 3 full seconds. The Kethvari auction master stood in complete darkness, unable to understand what was happening. Then emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in a dim red glow. Alarms began to wail. Guards shouted in confusion. And somewhere in the distance, explosions shook the ground. The attack had begun. Humanity's assault on Kethver Prime did not start with weapons. It started with information warfare on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. For weeks, human hackers had been quietly infiltrating Kethvari computer systems. They had planted hidden programs in military networks, financial databases, communication satellites. They had waited patiently for the right moment. That moment was now. Across the entire Kethvari dominion, systems crashed. Military vessels lost navigation. Banking networks went offline. Communication channels filled with static. 3,000 years of technological superiority became worthless in a matter of seconds. And while the Kethvari struggled to understand what was happening, Admiral Chen's fleet appeared in the sky above their capital. 200 human warships dropped out of stealth mode directly above the orbital defense stations. They had traveled for days in complete silence, invisible to every sensor, driven by cold calculation and burning anger. Now they revealed themselves. And the sight made the Kethvari commanders freeze with shock. The defense stations tried to power up their weapons. Too slow. Human missiles were already in flight, precision strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. Admiral Chen did not want to kill everyone on those stations. He wanted them alive to witness what came next. All ships begin landing operations, he ordered. Protect the troop transports. Nothing gets through. The space around Kethver Prime erupted in fire. Deep underground, Commander Tanaka heard the explosions and knew her moment had come. Move, she told her team. Now they burst from their hiding places and sprinted through the corridors of the slave complex. Kethvari guards, already confused by the system failures, barely had time to react before they were taken down. Tanaka's team moved like shadows, fast and silent and deadly. They reached Section 7 in less than 3 minutes. The doors that should have been locked stood open, their electronic systems fried by the cyber attack. Tanaka kicked through the last barrier and found herself face to face with the human prisoners. They stared at her with disbelief. Some of them started crying. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, reached through the bars of her cell. "Are you real?" she whispered. Tanaka knelt down and took the child's hand. "I'm real," she said, "and I'm taking you home." Her team spread out through the section, breaking open cells and gathering prisoners. They had brought medical supplies, food, water. Many of the captives were too weak to walk and had to be carried. Tanaka's soldiers did not complain. They lifted the injured onto their backs and kept moving. "Commander," one of her team reported, "we've got company. Kethvari reinforcements heading our way." Tanaka turned to face the corridor they had come through. She could hear boots pounding on the stone floor. "Lots of boots. Get the civilians to the extraction point," she ordered. "I'll hold them here." She took position behind a fallen pillar, her weapon ready. The first Kethvari soldiers came around the corner and met a wall of precise fire. They fell. More came behind them. They fell too, but there were so many of them. Above the planet, The space battle had turned into a one-sided destruction. The Kethvari fleet, caught off guard by the sudden attack and crippled by the cyber warfare, could barely mount a defense. Human pilots flew with a ferocity that shocked their enemies. They were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for their people. That made all the difference. Admiral Chen watched the battle from his command station, directing movements and coordinating attacks. But his attention kept drifting to the planet below, where thousands of slaves were waiting to be rescued. "Status report on ground operations," he demanded. "Troop transports have landed, Admiral. Our forces are entering the slave complex from multiple points. Resistance is heavy, but disorganized." Chen nodded. "And Commander Tanaka's team?" A pause. "We've lost contact with them, sir. They went dark 15 minutes ago." The Admiral closed his eyes. Tanaka was one of his best officers. If she had gone dark, it meant she was in trouble. It meant she was fighting for her life. Send reinforcements to her last known position. Maximum priority. Yes, Admiral. Underground, Tanaka was running low on ammunition. She had held the corridor for almost 20 minutes. But the Kethvari kept coming. Her team had gotten the prisoners to a safe room deeper in the complex, but now she was alone. Wounded and nearly out of options, a Kethvari soldier rushed her position. She dodged his first strike and countered with a knife, but another guard grabbed her from behind. She struggled, but she was tired, so tired. Then the guard holding her screamed and let go. Tanaka spun around to see a massive hole in his chest and a squad of human soldiers pouring into the corridor from a side passage. "Commander," the squad leader said, helping her to her feet. "Cavalry's here," she laughed, "despite everything. Despite the pain and the exhaustion and the blood. Took you long enough," she said. On the surface, human forces had secured most of the major facilities. The Kethvari military, still reeling from the cyber attack, offered resistance in some areas, but surrendered in others. Many of them had never experienced defeat. They did not know how to handle it, but the real work was happening below ground. Thousands of slaves, from dozens of species, were being liberated from the complex. Human soldiers moved through the tunnels with medical teams and translators, opening cells and offering help. Many of the prisoners did not believe it at first. They had been told that no one would ever come for them. They had given up hope. Now, hope had arrived. Carried by soldiers in unfamiliar uniforms, speaking a language most of them did not understand. But the meaning was clear. You are free. You are safe. We are taking you home. On the damaged Exodus Dawn. Captain Vasquez watched the battle through her ship's remaining sensors. She saw human warships engaging the enemy. She saw transports descending to the planet. She saw the impossible becoming reality. Then a message came through on the emergency channel. "Exodus Dawn, this is Rescue Vessel Hope's Light. We are on approach to your position. Prepare for evacuation." Lena stared at the words on her screen. She read them 3 times to make sure she was not hallucinating. "David," she called out. "David, get up here." Young engineer stumbled onto the bridge, exhausted as always. She pointed at the screen. He read the message. Then he read it again. Then he sat down on the floor and started laughing. It was the laughter of someone who had been holding tension for weeks and finally could let go. "They came," he said. "They actually came." Elena nodded, tears running down her face. "Yes," she said. "They came." Within hours, the 847 survivors of the Exodus Dawn were safely aboard human rescue vessels. They were given food, medical care, and warm blankets. They were told that they were going home, and as the last transport lifted off from the burning remains of the Kethvari slave complex, Captain Vasquez stood at a viewport and watched the planet shrink below her. She thought about everything her people had suffered. She thought about everyone they had lost. Then she opened a channel and broadcast a message across all frequencies. "To any who prey upon humanity," she said, her voice steady and clear, "remember this day. Remember what answers when we call for help. Remember what happens when you harm our people?" She paused. "Come for our own, always, and across the galaxy." Species who had suffered under Kethvari cruelty for thousands of years heard that message and began to believe that change was possible. An SOS echoed across the stars, humanity's vengeance. Was the reply Part 5? The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from hundreds of species packed the galleries, watching as the human ambassador took the floor. The elder species sat in their elevated seats, their expressions ranging from anger to fear to something that might have been respect. Ambassador Sarah Chen, the daughter of Admiral Marcus Chen, stood at the central podium. She was young for a diplomat, but she had earned her position. And today, she was about to change galactic history. The Council has called this emergency session to condemn humanity's unprovoked attack on the Kethvari Dominion, she began. You claim we have violated treaties? You claim we have disrupted galactic peace? You claim we have acted without authorization? She paused and looked around the chamber. You are correct. We did all of those things, and we would do them again. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Several elder species representatives rose to object, but Sarah held up her hand. Before you condemn us, you will watch something. She activated a holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Slave pits, carved into rock. Cages filled with sentient beings. Auction halls where children were sold away from their parents. Torture chambers where new slaves were broken. Medical facilities where unwilling subjects were experimented upon. This is what the Kethvari have been doing for 3,000 years, Sarah said. This is what your treaties protected. This is what your laws allowed to continue. She switched to another set of images. Testimonies from survivors. Velith prisoners describing generations of captivity. Morani families explaining how they had been hunted and harvested. Crystalline singers showing the scars where pieces of their bodies had been cut away and sold. The victims of Kethvari cruelty came to this council for centuries, Sarah continued. They begged for help. They pleaded for justice. And you told them to be patient. You told them that the diplomatic process takes time. You told them that the Kethvari were protected by treaty. Her voice grew harder. Oh, you let this happen. All of you. And now you want to condemn us for stopping it. The chamber fell silent. No one knew how to respond. Ambassador Korath of the Kethvari rose from his seat. His scales had turned pale with anger. This is outrageous. My people have rights under galactic law. We demand that humanity be punished for their aggression. Sarah turned to face him directly. Your people enslaved millions. Your people murdered innocent beings for profit. Your people took children from the Exodus Dawn and were about to sell them to the highest bidder. She stepped closer to him. You have no rights that we recognize. You have no standing to demand anything. The only thing your people deserve is exactly what they received. Korath's mouth opened and closed. For the first time in his long career, he had nothing to say. Then something unexpected happened. A small figure rose from the minor species section. It was a Velith diplomat, frail and trembling, speaking in public for the first time in her life. The humans speak truth, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My people have suffered under Kethvari rule for 800 years. We lost countless children to their raids. We begged the council for help. No one listened. She turned to look at Sarah Chen. The humans listened. The humans came. The humans saved our people who were in those cells. Another figure rose. A Morani ambassador, their skin flashing with colors of gratitude and hope. My brother was in that facility. He had been a slave for 30 years. The humans freed him. They are treating his wounds. They are bringing him home. More voices joined in. The crystalline singers. The Grath, species that had been silent for centuries, afraid to speak against the powers that oppressed them. Now they spoke, and they spoke for humanity. The council session lasted for 3 more days. In the end, no sanctions were imposed on humanity. The treaties that had protected the Kethvari were declared void. New laws were proposed to prevent the slave trade throughout the galaxy, and humanity was finally recognized as an equal member of the galactic community. 6 months later, Admiral Marcus Chen visited a medical station orbiting Earth. The survivors of the Exodus Dawn had been recovering there, healing from their physical and emotional wounds. Today was a special day. The last patients were being released. He found David Park sitting in a garden area, staring at the blue planet below. You're the engineer, Chen said, sitting down beside him. The one who kept the ship alive. Oh, David nodded. I just did what needed to be done. It's all any of us can do. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. What will you do now? David thought about it. He had been offered positions at top engineering firms across human space. He had been called a hero. He had been given medals and awards. I want to go back out there, he said finally. I want to help build new colonies, new homes. I want to prove that what happened to us doesn't define us. Chen smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and genuine. Good answer? On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of a brand new ship. The Exodus Dawn 2 was everything its predecessor had been, and more, faster, stronger, better protected. But it carried the same mission, finding a new home for colonists who dreamed of building something better. Captain, her communications officer said. We're receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen. Lena smiled. Put it through. The Admiral's face appeared on her screen. Captain Vasquez. I wanted to wish you luck on your voyage, and to thank you. Thank me. For what? For holding on. For not giving up. For reminding us why we fight. Lena felt tears threatening to form, but held them back. We just did what we had to do, Admiral. Same as you, but sometimes doing what you have to do is the bravest thing of all. The transmission ended. Alina turned to face her crew. Set course for the Andromeda sector, she ordered. Let's go find our new home. The Exodus Dawn 2 leaped into faster-than-light travel, carrying 3,000 colonists toward their future. Behind them, the galaxy was changing. Species that had lived in fear were beginning to hope. Empires that had ruled through cruelty were beginning to fall. A new era was dawning. And on the far rim of known space, a distress call reached Earth. It came from a species called the Tethmari. They were insectoid beings with 6 legs and compound eyes, and they had been enslaved by a regional power for 200 years. They had heard stories about what humanity had done to the Tethmari. They had heard that humans answered when others called for help, so they sent their message into the void and waited. Admiral Chen read the transmission in his office. He was tired. The operation against the Tethmari had taken everything he had. He had thought about retiring, spending his remaining years in peace. But then he read about the Tethmari children being forced to work in mines. He read about their families being separated and sold. He read about their hopes dying as year after year passed without rescue. He called Captain Vasquez on a secure channel. Lena, I have something I need to show you. She read the message. Her expression did not change. When do we leave? She asked. Chen smiled. I was hoping you would say that. He turned to his communications officer. Send a reply to the Tethmari. Tell them help is on the way. Tell them to hold on. He paused. Tell them humanity always answers. And across the stars, the message traveled. It reached the Tethmari in their darkest hour. It reached other oppressed species who had given up hope. It became a legend, a promise, a beacon of light in the endless darkness of space. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy. Not through technology or military might or political manipulation, but through something simpler. Something more powerful. They answered when. Others called for help. They came for their own. They never forgot, and they never stopped coming. On a memorial wall on Luna, a new inscription was being carved beneath the names of all those lost to the Tethmari over the centuries. Workers carefully etched each letter into the black stone. The inscription read, "The stars heard their cry." Humanity was the answer. Below that, in smaller letters, "We remember. We come. Always." And so they did. Always.